I was born in China. My parents were medical missionaries, and we were in Yunnan province, way in the south, about 100 miles from the Burmese border, where it took 10 days by horseback to get to the nearest road that a wheeled vehicle could get on. There were 3 white families in the compound, and our mothers were our teachers, so my early schooling was through my mother.
Your Stanford education does not stop with your degree, and do not let go of the great networks that are available for women, through women at Stanford. Use them and then give back to them. They're more valuable, they will become more valuable over your life than you can imagine.
A new student, sometimes, I mean, you're eager to get out and just get into the real world, I suppose, and get a job. You know, because they have all these job fairs in our days. We didn't have job fairs. We didn't know what those were. And I know, I recognize they want to, you know, get a good paying job and start on their families and all. But I think along the way, I guess, you know, time goes pretty fast. That they really need to remember to follow their dreams.
I think Stanford made a huge difference because I don't think I would have been able to do more than one of those, except for the fact that I was here. And this was the kind of place where I could take an idea or think that a certain new approach was needed that I didn't happen to know at that time. But I could go learn it because the people here were so open and so interested in collaborations and cooperation, and Stanford is a place full of such excellent colleagues. Being at Stanford made that possible.
To be all the things that a woman can be, a wife, a mother, a sister, an aunt, any of those relationships, they're big. Mm-hmm. And if you're really going to be any of those things, you are relating to a family cluster that has to include the men in our society.
Yes. Your obligation is to certainly take care of your families, but also to give back. Make sure you give. Don't forget from whence you've come. Don't get out there and get so big and high-minded that you forget about all those who sacrificed to get you where you are today.
And I want to say this not just to the young women graduates, but to the young men graduates too, because we've got to find some way to make life a better balance between work and family and community. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Women of Silicon Valley research did, to show that what women in the Valley really want is some way to balance the 3 pieces. Mm-hmm. That's got to work for men as well as for women. I think this is hugely important.
My mom and I and my daughter have all served on the Cap and Gown board from time to time, and I think that's a whole different experience of Cap and Gown, and equally valuable, because then you meet women across classes and you get a sense of the continuity and the ongoing flow of relationships and the good that the women of this campus have done for Stanford, for their community, for the world. So it's a great place to see another aspect of Cap and Gown.
What I have learned is not to put too much emphasis on prestige. Take the courses you enjoy. Work hard at them. Remember that it's not the grades that count, but it's what you get out of them.
Thank you.
I think what Stanford gave me was not necessarily the knowledge that I learned, but how to find the knowledge or to explore the confidence to do it in the volunteer field or whatever.
I think, the main thing that I like to share with people is, my big passion right now is really increasing the number of women in business. I feel like, it's 30% in the business schools. It's not going to get better at the CEO level until it's 50-50 in the business schools. It's not going to be 50-50 in the business schools till we get people going into industries that are business oriented to funnel into the business schools.
You know, and if you think you run out of time, spend less time putting on your makeup in the morning. Really.
Okay.
I mean, I remember when I was a dean, I was 25 years old, trying to figure out what a dean was. And I met my first woman college president, who was a woman from the East Coast, who walked in and talked to all these women administrators and said, "So, women, you're busy? How much time did it take you to put on your hose? How long does it take you to walk with those heels? How long did it take you to put that outfit together? And tell me about your makeup and your hair and your nails. How much time are you spending on all of that? Do you consciously give mental time to keeping your knees together because you're wearing skirts that expose them? How much time do you think men spend on any of that? Put all your time together that you just spend on those things I described. How much power are you giving up every day?"
The other thing I would just want to point out to you that behind me, just so you know what's behind me here, is a drawing, a charcoal portrait that I did. And this is a charcoal portrait of Judith Jameson, who at the time that this, what she looked like at this point was when she was the lead dancer for the Alvin Ailey dance troupe. She's now the artistic director. And so this is one of the drawings I did.
The fact that I came from, my father was one of 6 boys, and we came from a very macho environment. And part of that was the principle that you coped with everything yourself. You had to be self-sustaining, and that was wonderful as a girl. Of course, it explained why I was always treated pretty much the way my brothers were treated, and why I learned how to use my hands and carpentry, which got me my carpentry job. But because it just was assumed that I would do everything that they did.
I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mother, who had just come from her daily chore of shopping for the produce that we were going to have for the rest of the day. Poor people don't buy a lot of material in advance. You buy what you need and you use what you can almost immediately. And my mother would assemble on the kitchen table a chopping bowl. In those days, there were no mixers. If you were gonna blend something, you were gonna chop it and you were gonna blend it. And in that chopping bowl, she would assemble a brilliant yellow pepper, a bright red pepper, and a green pepper. And she would take a cluster of red radishes and put those in a very particular place, and take a sheath of green scallions and put them into the composition with some flair, I must say. And then she would approach introducing me to such elements as the onion, and that an onion was a magnificent object that you just didn't look at. You took the time to see. And when that you began to slice into an onion, you would do very well to appreciate the character of transparency in what a slice of that onion would be. And that was the beginning of my art education.
The Stanford 500 was a very interesting period of time, and the reason the cap of 500 women was set was that Mrs. Stanford suddenly realized that women really liked to come to Stanford, and that the number of women were beginning to outnumber the number of men, and she did not want the memorial to her son to turn into a women's college. And so she had the trustees put a limit of 500 on. And this lasted until the mid-30s.
Came to Stanford in the fall of 1928. In fact, my family was moving to San Diego, and so I had to apply for college, and the only 2 names I knew were Berkeley and Stanford. So I thought Stanford sounded, I'd heard the story of the axe, and I thought that sounded like an interesting place, so I applied at Stanford and entered in 1928.
I have some pretty clear memories of coming to Stanford, and at that point we were in all-women dorms with guardians at the gate, house mothers, and pretty strict rules and times for when you had to be in and when you could stay out. So it was a pretty patriarchal, paternalistic system at that point. And I also remember that you had to wear nylons on the quad, skirts was the appropriate attire. So it was pretty formal. And men and women got together on dates or in ritual parties. There wasn't a lot of free-flowing back and forth.
I was born on my mother's and father's kitchen table. 5 years later, my brother was born at Children's Hospital, so you can see how rapidly things changed.
And the bottom line, I think, from all of them, regardless of what they taught, was that they were passionate. They were passionate about their subject, and it just came across. You don't learn how to do that. You have to love what you're doing. And you know, a student would ask you, the professor, a question, and he, you know, would be so eager to share what he knew and give all these little other anecdotes that fit in with it. And that's what makes for an interesting talk or an interesting person, right?
Mm-hmm. So I joined Cap and Gown as an undergraduate, and was actually the third generation of my family to join Cap and Gown. So my grandmother had been in Cap and Gown, and my mother and my aunt had been in Cap and Gown. Then I joined, and now my cousin is hopefully joining this year. So that's the affiliation to Cap and Gown, and similar story for Stanford, obviously. My grandmother attended Stanford, as did my grandfather, both my parents, and numerous aunts and uncles. So I've been very much attached to the school in many different ways.
You just have to remember that you never know when something that's offered to you is going to be the opportunity. That may be the exchange beer bus where you meet your husband, or it may be that Saturday morning when you meet somebody that will change your life because it was at Hewlett-Packard. You just don't know. So be open to everything that comes around. Be selective. You don't have to do everything because you can't do everything. My mantra is take your cookies when they're passed. But if you're allergic to nuts, don't take those.
Take advantage, full advantage of everything Stanford has to offer. I think I didn't. I'm sorry that I didn't take advantage of more opportunities. Be sure to do what you, I mean, as I say, I had hoped to be in the mental test. I mean, be sure to carry through with what you would like to do.
Mm-hmm. No matter what you choose to do, no matter where you go in your life, career, life choices, family, always give. Because if you don't give, you'll feel emptiness at some point. I don't think women know how to be self-serving. I think a strength and a burden for women. You know, and there are no accidents, in my opinion, that we're born in women's bodies.
Mm-hmm. If you're doing something you really love to do, then all this other stuff falls into place.
I think the advice that I would give would be make